Well, welcome back. As you can see, my office is still a mess. Um, we're going to talk about delivery today, and I guess technically I should have a much better background, but when they moved me into this online teaching and during the pandemic and everything, sometimes we had to do what we had to do. So ignore my background, please. It'll get better. Y'all may not be around to see it, but it will get better. All right, we're going to talk about chapter 10 today. I understand that the syllabus says 12. But if you remember the beginning of the semester, they changed the edition of the book from 2 to 3. And some things changed. And I told you we'd take it up as we came along. If we did according to the old syllabus, we'd be talking about persuasive presentations today, informative next week, and then delivery. And I think we need to go over delivery long before we get to those other two. So instead of the sequence in the syllabus, I will also send out a notice saying this. We're doing chapter 10 today. Chapter 10 is about delivery presentation. I'm sure you have all seen some speakers that you thought, wow, this is great. And other ones you thought, are you serious? You know, the other day I was I have a link to a church I attended when I was a young man in Pasadena, Texas, some 40 years ago. And so every now and then I click on it, see what's happening with people I know, and they have a temporary pastor there because they are searching for a new one. And I'm glad they are, because the temporary one, every other line was, no, I don't know. That's why I'm here to find out. Professional bias on my part, I guess, but it drove me crazy. I couldn't even listen to it. So what I want you to do when you get ready to deliver your presentation is think about those speakers that in your mind were wow, and those speakers that were in your mind were, oh, this sucks, and try to avoid them and try to emulate the wow ones. Now the book starts talking about TED Talks. TED Talks are great. I love them. If you haven't seen them, it's capital T, capital E, capital D. Google it. You can find a TED Talk on anything. You really can. And if you want to know some information on something, go to TED Talks. I mean, a lot of people nowadays Google stuff all the time anyway and watch it on YouTube videos. Well, a TED Talk is a little more formal presentation. But watch the TED Talk, see what makes a good speaker, see what you like. Communication apprehension. They have to make big words sometimes to say what we already know. Most academics that I know say that communication apprehension isn't stage fright, and I tend to disagree with them, because you are performing. If to me, communication apprehension means you have a problem communicating in general, and most of you don't. But that's what they want to call it professionally, so we'll call it communication apprehension. And what you have to understand is it is normal. I am nervous before I walk into the classroom and speak to a class. Even if I've taught that class, that topic for 5-10 years, even if I have taught that class for most of the semester, I'm nervous. And I'm nervous because I want to do good. And I hope that you feel the same way, that you want to do good. That's why you're nervous more than anything else. And most people don't see the nervous like I do, because I'm trained to look for it. What can you do to limit your communication apprehension, to reduce it some? The most important thing is practice. Know your material. If you don't know your material, you will not do well. You'll keep saying and and that doesn't make for a good speaker. visualize success. That's one of the most important things. I hear students all the time, man, I'm not going to do good. Well, if you tell yourself you're not going to do good, that's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. You know, if no, when you were in high school, did you have pep rallies? I know we did, and I think my grandkids do, so I figure you did too. Did you ever see a pep rally start with, we're going to suck, we're going to lose? No. You always have this visualized winning, even though you never won a game and they've never lost a game. You never go into a pep rally saying we're going to lose. You shouldn't do it when you're going into a presentation. Connect with your audience. I realize that in this forum, it's kind of difficult. That's why I say this class should be called virtual speaking, not public speaking. But they don't pay me the big bucks to make those decisions. But when you are in an audience, you know, make eye contact, connect with them, ask them questions that will intrigue them. If you're going to talk about the schools, the price of books in college, yeah, most of your classmates understand that. How many of you think the books cost too much? So connect with your audience and say we and us. Don't say I. Deep, slow breathing. One mistake that many students make when they're making a presentation is they're really nervous and they really talk real fast and then they don't take deep breaths and you really can't hear them because they're not articulating because they're talking too fast because they're nervous and they're scared. Slow down, take a deep breath. Now there's different methods of delivery. Manuscript delivery. The president does that when he reads the teleprompter. He has the teleprompter, he's reading every word. That's real important, especially when you're making national decisions and declaring war and that type of stuff. You want to make sure that every word is exact and precise. You're not that important yet. You may be one day, but not in this class. Memorizing. So many of my students try to memorize their speech. And I keep telling them, don't do that. Have you ever seen the bloopers at the end of a movie where these actors blow their lines? They get paid millions of dollars. And you don't. So why try to memorize it? If you try to memorize your speech and you are successful, okay. If you try to memorize your speech and you mess up, it's going to be hard to figure out where you were at. And you're going to be up stuttering saying, and that's not a good speech. Impromptu. An impromptu speech is actually, or presentation, is actually just what it says, off the cuff. It's impromptu. But there's a story about a baseball player, I believe it was Yogi Berra, that did great interviews after the game. And somebody said, well, how do you do such great impromptu interviews? And he said, I practice. Well, theoretically, impromptu is not practice. But what he would do was, as the game played on, he would notice certain things. That forced error in the third inning. That missed fly ball in the seventh inning. All those things he would take note of. Because he knew that when he walked out of the dressing room, that's what they were going to ask him about. So what you can do is, when you're doing a presentation, have somebody play the devil's advocate with you and ask you questions. Because I try to get students to focus on, this isn't about this class. This isn't about COMM 1110. This is about your future in the work world. When a boss comes up one day and says, hey, the CEO will be here next week with the head shed, and we need you to give a presentation on the project you're working on. You can make or break your career making that presentation. So what you should do is have somebody ask you the questions that you know they're going to ask. Because one of the worst things you can do is lie about an answer. Well, why did this happen? Well, if you lie about it, they're going to figure it out. But second to the worst thing you can do is I don't know, but I'll get back with you. I mean, that's good because you're being honest. You don't know, but you show lack of self-confidence when you do that. You need to be prepared for these things. What we're doing in this class is called extemporaneous speaking. Extemporaneous speaking is where you've read your material enough, you know your material well enough that you can talk about it without reading it. That's why when you look at my speaker's notes, there's just one or two words there. They remind me what I need to talk about. So it's pretty simple. Extemporaneous speaking is the best kind of speaking because you have more mobility, more way to move around. If you realize that you're cut short for time because something took longer than what you wanted to, there's other things that you might be able to cut out. If there's some things that it's going faster than what you thought, then you can fill in more. Mediated presentations are what you're doing in class now. It's something that a device is mediating. You're doing it over the internet. You're doing it with a video. And group presentations are where more than one of you talk. There is a group COMM class. It's a little bit different dynamic. The class is more about how groups function together and grow. But in a group presentation, you're not the only one talking. So there may be a team of you working on that project for Acme Corporation. And you might be the lead on the team, but somebody else might be the IT person on it. So you give your presentation and they give their presentation. And then somebody else might be the accounting person on it, and then they give their presentation. So, effective delivery skills. Like I started this out, what speakers do you remember? Which ones impressed you? And why? If you think back on that, and you try to emulate that, you'll be a better speaker. Paralinguistic skills. What does that mean? You know, like I said earlier, they decide to make all these big words. Paralinguistic skills is how do you use your voice? I got a big mouth. And I have hearing aids. And when I'm not wearing my hearing aids, I got an even bigger mouth. When I was teaching at University of Louisiana Lafayette as a graduate student, the professor told me one day, you got to handle the Monday class. The Monday class was an auditorium with 500 people. And I'm thinking, yeah, I got my stuff together. He knows I can handle it. He said, no, you got a big mouth. You can reach it back in the room. Burst my bubble. But in volume, how loud are you? You know, a lot of professors and teachers, when something is important, it's going to be on the test, they'll raise their voice. Since I got a big mouth and I'm loud anyway, when something's important and I want you to pay attention to it, I usually lower my voice and I get much softer spoken. Because it changes. And it's something that students notice. Pitch. Are you speaking high or speaking low? Rate. How fast are you talking? Like I said, when you get nervous, you really talk fast. And a lot of people, they run out of time. They don't run out of time. They don't use all the time because they speak real fast. And a 3 to 5 minute presentation ends up being 2 minutes, and then they don't get docked off points because they talk too fast. Are you talking so fast it's hard for somebody to understand you? Relax. Fluency. Vocal fillers. How many of those are you using? Most of you, when you get your thing, your paperback from me, there'll be this part on there that I go, because some of you, for whatever social or physiological reason, can't stand silence. So instead of finishing something, being quiet, and figuring out your next word, you say, Nonverbal behaviors. What are nonverbal behaviors? Well, we all know wave, hi, that's nonverbal. There's many of them. And culturally, this isn't in this particular section, but since we're talking about nonverbal behaviors and gestures, I like to bring up a couple of points that you need to understand, especially if you are in an international community. A lot of the gestures that we use are not acceptable to other people. You know, this means peace. For a long time, or for a time a while back, a few years back, some of you may remember it, people were doing this. Well, this means the same thing as this in some countries. Actually, this means the same thing as this, but you get my point. What's that mean to you? Okay? Some countries it means you're an asshole. How about this one? You crazy? Argentina means you got a phone call. So the point I'm trying to make is we use gestures when we talk all the time. In an international situation, you need to be careful of what gestures you use. When I was in Peru, I was telling the people about my children. I said, I got a 9-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 7-year-old. And he kind of snickered, and I said, what? They said, well, here, when we talk about animals, we use our hand like this. When we talk about children, we use our hand like this. So you just called your children animals. I said, oh, so you've met them. So something I didn't even realize, and I try to look that stuff up before I go to different places. Eye contact. Eye contact is very important. As a matter of fact, for this video, I actually moved my camera over more so on the text that I'm going to be glancing at. Because my camera was over here, and I kept looking over here and seeing my pretty face in the screen, and I realized that I wasn't looking at you. Eye contact is very important in an actual physical, but it's important when you do a video as well. I get a lot of students that send me a video and they're doing this right here, and nonverbal behaviors and gestures and eye contact, and I can tell they're reading because they're not looking at the camera. Attire. What are you wearing? Now, when I teach in person all the time, I wear a suit. I have gotten away from that doing these video things for a couple of reasons. I live out in the middle of nowhere, and getting my stuff dry cleaned is a hassle. It's hot in my basement. I'm working on it, renovating it. I didn't want to sit down here in a suit and sweat. I'm a little sweaty and just this right here. But what you wear is important. If we were at down the Chattahoochee River and I was giving a presentation about water moccasins, if I showed up in a suit and dress shoes, you'd probably go, huh? But the people that do those presentations generally have boots on and blue jeans, and maybe a polo shirt or a t-shirt with Columbus State on it or something, because it's more appropriate for the situation. I go to Rotary every week. If I am making a presentation in Rotary, I wear a suit. If I'm introducing somebody in Rotary, I wear a suit. If I'm not, I got a collared shirt on, maybe a polo shirt, generally long sleeve button up, blue jeans, nice shoes. What you wear says a lot about you. If this were a physical classroom and we walked into the physical classroom the first day, and this old 60-year-old guy walked in with a hat on backwards and flip-flops and holy blue jeans and a tank top, you'd be wondering, what the hell is his problem? Who's he trying to be? When I grew up, I know it was a long time ago, it was long before y'all came around, you wore suit to certain things. So when I went to a funeral, I wore a suit. I spent 20 years in the Army, and when there was a funeral, it was a formal affair. I had a formal uniform on. My wife grew up in blue-collar Illinois. Her brother passed away. We went to the funeral, And I was, beside the people that worked in the funeral home, I was the only person wearing a suit. And she'd been away from home so long, many of his friends did not know that he had a sister. And people would walk up to me and ask me, "Where's the restroom? Where's so and so? Where's so and so?" Thinking I worked there because I had a suit on. But that's the way I was raised. Multimedia aids. See, I do every now and then too. It's all right to do it every now and then. Multimedia aids. The main thing about multimedia aids is they need to reinforce your point. I was in the graduate school at Columbus State in counseling, and 4 girls were doing a presentation on important women. And it was a great PowerPoint. You know, it was one of those automated, animated PowerPoints. And there was a picture, and it'd fade away, and another woman's picture would come in, and it would fade away, and another woman's picture would come in. And I thought, Susan B. Anthony, I know her, what's her name? Betsy Ross. I still can't figure out that other one's name. I don't know what these women said because I was so interested in trying to figure out the pictures up there. So it distracted from the presentation more than it reinforced it. Now you can use a couple of different things. You can use text. When PowerPoint was coming out, we used to do it on the computer and print it out on overhead slides. I'll talk about those in a minute. But when I had to give a presentation in the Army, I used like 28 to 32 font and bullet comments. The guy before me typed it on a regular typewriter and scanned it and put it up there. And the sergeant major in the back of the room sat back and he says, "Why don't you read that to me because I can't read it." So when I got up, being the smart aleck that I am, I put my PowerPoint up with big words and everything else. I said, "I'm not going to insult your intelligence by reading this to you." Sergeant Major didn't like that, but, you know. So it can just be words. It can be graphics. Pie charts, bar charts, line charts. How do you want people to help understand this? If you have just text of the Columbus State University budget, that's a whole bunch of numbers to read. But if you put it in a pie chart, you can see which is where the most money spent, where the least money spent, all relative to one another. You can have models or objects. Those are always neat to have. You can have a model, something for people to look at. I had a rubber band ball up here, but it's gone. I use my duck. I can be talking about ducks. I can have a model. You can look at it, it's 3D. But you want to make sure that people can see it. You can have photographs. Photographs are always good. The problem sometimes with photographs are simply they're too small. Have you been on any of your social media and somebody posted a picture and you're trying to look at it on your phone and it's too small to really see the detail? Audio video clips. You can use audio video clips in your presentation, but it can't be your whole presentation. If you want to reinforce your point, I was talking about how language has changed over the years when I was in graduate school, and I used an audio clip of a song that said when a Coke was a Coke and a hoe was a hoe, and when I'm down with that meant you had the flu. It's a country song. Many of you may not know it, but it was just a little audio clip. They're great to have. They can support your point. If you were doing a presentation for me in this class, a couple of students in the past have had a laptop set up so the camera could see their laptop and them, and they had a PowerPoint on there, which was cool, but I couldn't read it. You can actually embed your PowerPoint in your video. If you don't know how to do that, YouTube has plenty of examples. So your kind of picture's up in a corner, and then the PowerPoint's there, and I can still see you. Others have had their camera on the PowerPoint, and I couldn't see them. Well, what's the point of making a video for me to tell you how you're doing if I can't see you? Methods to present. You could have computer-generated graphics. Most of you are familiar with those. Overhead document cameras. Now, if you look in most of the classrooms, they have a little camera up there on the podium where the teacher can take the book down and shine it down on the camera on it, and it presents it up on the wall to you. Before they had that technology, we had something called an overhead projector. It was a box, and you put a clear piece of plastic on it that had a picture on it and shine it up on the wall. Some of you may have seen those. Some places you go may still have those. A lot of places now use the kind of the same technology, but the computer sends it up there. Actually, for a while, they had this thing that sat over that the computer fed the picture into, and it shined it up there. Handouts. Handouts are nifty. You can give somebody a handout and pass it around. They can look at it. Yeah, it's pretty good. Pass it so-and-so. Here's my problem with passing stuff around in handouts, whether it be a paper handout or a model or anything else. When you pass handouts out during the presentation, you have lost at least 3 people, if not 4. And the reason that you've lost them is because the one that just looked at it is now trying to figure out where you're at. The one that's looking at it now is not paying attention to what you're talking about. The one that's getting it next is watching them saying, come on, I'm ready for it. Give me to see it. I want to see it. And sometimes the person after that in line is distracted by it too, and they're trying to look at it. So passing handouts out during the presentation is not necessarily a good idea. If you can give them out to them before they come in, they can take notes on them. Maybe they have the graphics on them, the pie charts and all, so they can see them better. Or they can get them on the way out the door. Flip charts. Anybody seen those big pieces of paper tablets on a little stand, white sheet? You can write on it, flip it over, and write on it, flip it over. A lot of times people write their presentation out on those and cover it, fold it back, and flip the first one, says, good afternoon, my name is Vernon Humphrey. Flip the second one, welcome to COMM 1110. Convergence. Convergence is something that wasn't really a problem until recently. And the reason convergence is a problem now is because you don't know how your presentation is going to be viewed all the time. You know, I said, you know, you got me. If I gave a presentation in the past, I was 99.999% sure nobody would ever see it again. It was there, real time, I did it. Now, everything is recorded. Everything is videoed. And how is the audience going to see it in the future? How is the audience, how is it going to be viewed? How relevant is it going to be? How connected are you going to be to that audience that sees it next week or next month? You ever seen any old video film from like newsreels from like the 1940s and 30s? That was before my time, by the way. You kind of like, what? Or look at that hair. Yeah. How's it going to be viewed? So chapter 10, folks. Remember, the syllabus the syllabus changed. We're doing chapter 10 this week. Make sure that you read my discussion and make your own comments. And I will see you next week in another video. Take care and have a great day. Gotta find my mouse.